Welcome to FutureLink Interview with Brad Smith, an interview podcast unlike any other. I can't speak, but that hasn't stopped me from wanting to have deep, meaningful conversations with some of the most interesting and accomplished people I know. So here's how it works. I send my questions in writing. My guest records thoughtful video responses. I ask follow-ups based on what they share. Then I get a talented guy to edit it all together into a seamless conversation that feels natural and flowing, even though the process behind the scenes is delightfully non-linear. For the very first episode of FutureLink Interviews, I'm honored and excited to feature someone who means the world to me. Jeremy Andrus is the CEO of Traeger Grills, the company that pioneered wood pellet grilling and transformed backyard cooking. Before that, he led Skullcandy as CEO, turning a small headphone startup into a global cultural brand. But beyond his impressive career, Jeremy has been one of my closest friends, and, outside of my parents, my most important mentor. His guidance, belief in me, and example have shaped my life in ways I can never fully repay. Jeremy, thank you for saying yes, for trusting this unusual format, and for helping launch this podcast. Let's dive in. First question. Introduce yourself and tell me about your career and education.
Well, I'm Jeremy Andrus. I am currently the CEO of Traeger Grills. I've been doing this for about a dozen years. I live in Salt Lake City with my wife and 6 children. We had 6 kids, 8 years apart. Oldest is just applying to college, and youngest boys are 9 years old. So life is not dull. Let me start by talking a little bit about as you'd asked about my education and career. Start with education, and as opposed to starting with college, I'm going to go all the way back to one of the early defining education moments of my life. Grew up in a small town in Minnesota, and at about 11 years old, moved to the Midlands of England. And we lived in a small town. I went to a small prep school that spanned just 3 houses in a row. I wore a suit and a tie, and it was a very, very strict prep school where, I just found myself uncomfortable. It was strict. It was straight out of Dead Poets Society. And having grown up in a town in Minnesota where I think the education was average, I really had to work hard to catch up, do tutoring. I had not studied Latin or French. Math was way ahead. And it forced me to really dig deep over a couple-year period and really advance my education, my thought process. And then when I moved back to the States, went to a really great junior high school in Boston and a phenomenal public school in high school in Maryland. And these schools were really, really high on academics, very competitive. And it just really forced me to work hard to keep up. And I found that when I got to BYU, I was well prepared, although a lot of people found the classes to be hard. I felt like high school was, I would say harder, but it had really prepared me. And, I decided early on that I wanted to go to Harvard Business School. And so I took a few years in between my first career experience, went back to Harvard Business School, and then jumped back in my career. From a career perspective, it's interesting for me to look back and realize that it has been just a windy, meandering journey. At least the first 10 years were. After that, I found a brand that I fell in love with, Skullcandy, a startup I joined, and then 9 years later, acquired a brand called Traeger. And so I've spent the last 21 years in 2 brands. So very long stints, but boy, early on, I was all over the place. I left my undergraduate experience. I was a management consultant for a couple of years, really with a strategy in mind, which was to learn analysis, get lots of exposure to different businesses, different industries. And I was 30 days in when I realized I was not a management consultant. For me, cerebral things for the sake of being cerebral was not interesting. I wanted to learn the analysis so that I could run a business. And tons of respect for great management consultants. I've engaged them multiple times as a CEO, but I'm a builder. I'm a doer. The output of great analysis and slides didn't inspire me. I wanted to own something and have skin in the game and see this thing grow over time. So that was my starting point. From there, I spent 6-8 months day trading stocks full time. I was on the West Coast, and I'd wake up at 3-4 in the morning, and I would go into the office and I'd start day trading. This is while I was a consultant. It started by, me taking all of my hard-earned money from cutting lawns, from a kid all the way up through high school, and I day traded, and I turned $100,000, which was everything, for 15 years or so, and I turned it into $2.5 million. And I wouldn't tell you the story if it ended there, but then I proceeded to lose it all, plus $200,000 more than I'd started with. And so, as I think about that experience, which I thought was just going to wreck me, I mean, that was a hard moment in my life. Each of these experiences, being a consultant, learning from that, what I liked, what I didn't like. From my day trading experience, I developed hotels for a few years with my dad as an entrepreneur. That was an experience. In between years of business school, I spent 10 weeks in London as an investment banker, worked for Lehman Brothers. And, again, it's like a nice, like highly discipline driven learning experience. But I was not more than 48 hours into my experience there, staffed on a deal, working 7 days a week. Didn't take me more than 2 or 3 days to figure out I was not an investment banker. And so I went through all these experiences, and, I'll say for some period of time, it was a little frustrating to me because I was driven. I always wanted to be successful in business. I worked really hard, but I felt like I was spinning my wheels and I was sort of bouncing around, not loving my experiences. And I look back and realize that there was tremendous learning in all of those experiences. And some people may find their more stability in their journey sooner than others. Took me a while, and I'm glad I had those experiences. They were, they were very diverse. My first stint as an entrepreneur was, although I've been starting businesses my whole life and writing little business plans and, just starting things, it was really a business in Dallas that I did called Igloo's Frozen Drinks, where I realized as one day I'm writing a business plan, building a financial model, on sales calls. Next day I'm in the warehouse driving a forklift trying to figure out how do I lift these heavy pallets into the rafters and take them down without destroying the warehouse. All of these experiences really led to something that seems so obvious to me now, and that's I'm an entrepreneur. I am a better builder. I'm a better creator. I'm more motivated when I have skin in the game than I am an employee who wants to slowly work his way up through an organization. And it's certainly not to say that one path is better than another. Every path is different. And I think we figure out what's in our DNA, what gets us excited, what wakes us up, gets us out of bed, feeling a spring in our step and some positive energy. And I will say that I just feel really fortunate as I think back over the last, 21 years across these two brands. And although they have been loaded with ups and downs, more downs than ups, and that's just the nature of an entrepreneur, some really great moments of learning, of growth, of hard times and adversity, and it's just been a great ride.
You talked about wanting to go to Harvard Business School. Why did you want to go there so badly? And I remember that you worked at Kimpton Hotels. What was your experience like there?
Kimpton and HBS. So let me first say something about HBS. I was 13 years old as I was watching my then bishop, Nolan Archibald, back home, my ecclesiastical leader. He was the CEO of Black & Decker, and he went to Harvard Business School. And I'd kind of decided early on that that's where I wanted to go, in part because I'd gone to this very sort of this school of rich history and heritage in the UK growing up. I'd heard of Harvard and I knew of its tradition. And then I saw my bishop who had been very successful, and I decided that I wanted to go there. I prepared for many, many years. And the first time I applied, I worked so hard and I got rejected. And it was very painful because, I'd gotten into some other schools and I was ready to go back to business school, but they weren't ready to have me back. And I worked really hard. I repositioned my career. I actually went back and saw the dean, Kim Clark, and I spent 15 minutes with him. It was very clear he wasn't going to help me get into Harvard Business School, though he was kind to take the time with me. But he gave me some advice. And I went back and I doubled my efforts, and I eventually got in. I got in the second year. But I was willing to go year after year after year of just investing in the application process. Unfortunately, I got in the second time because I may still be applying today. I'm a pretty determined guy. Kimpton Hotels was an interesting experience. This came as a result of a failed entrepreneurial venture, this Igloo's Frozen Drinks in Dallas, where I was partnered with my cousin, love him to death, one of my best friends and favorite cousins and people growing up, but our partnership didn't work out. It went south for reasons that I don't have time to talk about here. But that sort of that ended. The company survived, but it wasn't successful between the two of us. And I remember reading an article in Business Week about the CEO of Kimpton Hotels, a guy named Mike DePady, who was seemed like a terrific guy. And I reached out and I said, I'm going to be in San Francisco. I had a real love for hotels because I had spent time with my dad and his business developing a couple of hotels. And Kimpton Hotels seemed to be the perfect intersection for me between a real estate asset, like a very interesting asset where they'd go out and they would buy and reposition old buildings. In Salt Lake, the Hotel Monaco is an old bank building that was renovated into a hotel. In New Orleans, it was a Masonic temple that we renovated. And so I found really real appeal in the hotel industry, this repositioning of assets and a brand. And I'd always loved brands, and I loved the intersection across these three things. Mike DePady was a great guy, as advertised, and I spent a couple of years there, but it wasn't for me. It was, again, it took me all of these experiences to realize that being an employee didn't really get me out of bed in the morning. And I will tell you, I appreciate great employees. I appreciate great teams, but I'm a guy that needs to sit on top. I need some skin in the game. I need some ownership. And so, Kimpton Hotels was a good experience, but what it really did is it led me to Skullcandy.
How did you come to work at Skullcandy?
So I came to learn about Skullcandy through a good friend of mine who I knew growing up in Washington, D.C. His name was Bill Johnson. Bill reached out to me one day. I was with my then girlfriend, now wife. We were driving through a canyon in Southern California. We'd been long distance, living and commuting from various cities as was our professional life for a few years. And came out of this canyon, and I hadn't had a reception. There was a voice message from Bill, and he said, "I got to know this guy. I know him in Park City. His name is Rick Alden, and he's founded this helmet, this audio integration business into helmets, into snowboarding helmets." And he said it's called Skullcandy. Look it up online. And Kristin and I got back to her apartment, and we dialed up. It was like AOL, you got mail, dial-up modem. And we went to skullcandy.com, and it was like the most raw site you've ever seen. And it had this 10-second heavy metal loop just spinning. And I said, this is interesting. It seemed really authentic. I was living in San Francisco with Kimpton Hotels, getting bored in my current job and riding the bus from my home to the financial district every day and starting to see these white cables from people's iPods wound into their suit jackets. And I was fascinated by this growing trend in consumer audio that I was seeing. And Skullcandy was not only at the middle of it, but in a very focused way, they were building mobile and audio integration into Giro snowboard helmets. And I thought it was interesting. I reached out to Bill and I said, why don't you connect me? And I was invited to go back to the company's, I think it was a first or second anniversary sushi party. It was a tiny, tiny company at the time. It was 3 other guys. And I just remember that Saturday evening. It was a snowy, romantic, very cold Park City weekend night. And we're driving down Prospector Avenue in Park City, and it's winding around. And I see this DJ, the silhouette of this DJ, just spinning tunes in the window. Went upstairs, ate sushi. It's a tiny office, but there was a great vibe. And I said, "There's something really cool here." And what did I do? 2 weeks later, I quit my job, and I found myself in my beat-up old Ford Explorer. I left my cheap furniture in the apartment. I called the landlord on the way out of town and said, "I'm leaving. Will you throw my furniture away?" And he said, "Sure, if you leave me, if I can take your deposit." And I said, "Done. We'll call it done." And you know what? That was March of 2005, and that really set off on the beginning of a journey that changed my life. And it didn't just change my career, of course, like it developed my career, but changed my life in so many ways. It gave me passion and adversity and a reason to really get up and build. It gave me and my family interesting life opportunities. It gave us the ability to make money, which honestly, going from no money and day trading debt and, mortgage and a Subaru to pay off, to putting a little bit of money in the bank and paying off my debts, that was life-changing because it allowed me to focus more on my why and the experience of building a career. But then it allowed us to really earn resources as entrepreneurs that we're able to do good things with, and that really has been the good fortune and the blessing of loving what I do, going home and loving where I live, my family, my everything that we do, and then having the resources to do good. I won't say it's been an easy journey because it's been tough, and it's tough right now. But I consider all of it to be truly a good fortune and a blessing.
What was the best thing you learned at Skullcandy?
Skullcandy was an incredible learning experience. I can't even, if I were to really methodically go through everything that I learned at Skullcandy, it was an 8-year just quest for learning. And of course, the ambition was to build a business, but building my first business that succeeded was really a learning experience. Of all of the things that I learned, probably on top of that list would be things that I learned from the founder, Rick Alden. And he was not the easiest partner in the world. He is a larger than life founder, highly ADD, hard charging, aggressive, all over the place guy. But I really value the opportunity that I had to work with him, and what he did really well that I really learned from was how to think disruptively, how to step back and acknowledge that, people tend to think the same way, and and inertia sets in how an industry's run, in our thought process, and figuring out how to step back and think disruptively in a way that a consumer really values, I thought was an incredibly important capability. And I learned it over the course of many years, and having spent hundreds and thousands of hours together and traveling the world and talking and like really picking his brain. And that was incredibly important to me.
What was the worst thing you experienced at Skullcandy?
The worst thing that I experienced at Skullcandy, boy, just the way that there's a long list of things that I've learned, there's a long list of hard things that I went through. And that just happens when you're a young entrepreneur, a young operator, learning to build a business. And when it really starts to grow, it's just baptism by fire. But the worst thing was probably associated with being the highest shorted stock on the NASDAQ. On a percentage basis, we were more shorted than any other stock in the NASDAQ. It's hard as a young CEO trying to figure out how to be a CEO and then trying to figure out how to be a public company CEO and just to realize that people are betting against you. And it was hard because as I would read these short seller memos and acknowledge there was truth to them. They were well written. They weren't all true. They were a little misleading, but there was truth to them. And it was a hard moment because we were too small to be public. We didn't completely control our destiny because it was a small category that Beats was dominating. And we really connected into a device, an iPhone, that we didn't control. And so there were business challenges. And then there's just this very public hot seat of being a CEO of a highly shorted stock. It was hard.
What key lessons from turning Skullcandy into a lifestyle brand did you apply when acquiring and relocating Traeger to Utah? And how has that shaped your approach to building Traegerhood as a community?
There's so many lessons that I learned at Skullcandy that I applied to Traeger, and I would say as just a general rule, Skullcandy was my blueprint for Traeger, and it was a blueprint for from the perspective of things that we did well, but it was very much a blueprint that where I was able to outline the things that I was not proud of that I did at Skullcandy, things that I didn't understand as a young CEO, as a young business operator, from the perspective of someone building his first business and first brand. And so I really, really relied on Skullcandy as a blueprint. And that really formed the early years of success at Traeger. And then I realized that blueprints get stale and businesses need to reinvent. And things that learned at one point along the way need to evolve and be built differently going forward. And that's just made this incredible experience of learning. But one of the things that I really learned was how to build a brand in an authentic way that people care about. How to leverage grassroots, like very authentic marketing, and influencers who are validating your brand as a platform to be more credible to people. And that was really the foundation of my vision for bringing community to Traeger. And we call it the Traegerhood. And it's what is the Traegerhood? It's a community of people that are coming together who have this love not only for food, for the eating experience, but develop this love for cooking, for sharing on their back patios with their families, with their friends. And my ability to do that and to hire a team that knows how to do it was really rooted in what I learned in terms of building a brand that created emotion and was important to consumers at Skullcandy.
In your Harvard Business Review piece on fixing toxic cultures, you stressed authenticity. How do you cultivate that in a high-growth environment like Traeger's, especially during challenging times?
I wrote an article in Harvard Business Review 7 or 8 years ago, and it was really on how we rebuilt a toxic culture. The culture at Traeger when I got on the inside was it was shockingly bad. It was painful. They were good people, and they've called me over the years and said, "Why do you speak ill of the company and the people?" And I want to be clear in saying they were good people. They were misaligned with the business that I wanted to build. The culture was not aspirational. It was not motivating. And in building a culture in a small startup, culture gets built organically, and even if it's not happening deliberately, the vision of the early leaders and what they value in people, that just starts to multiply over time, even if not done deliberately. But when you go into a 27-year-old business and the culture is really toxic, and you've got this very stark experience of wanting to build something and then getting on the inside and realizing the culture was the greatest constraint, not the strategy, not the operation, it really motivated me to start over. And I learned to connect, to build and connect the cultural values of the business, how we think, how we behave, like what is the common thread of what we believe in, and how does that ladder up to the vision that I had for the business. And it's so important. At the end of the day, I really believe that the successes that organizations have, they're rooted in the platform of common cultural values. And that's really where the success came from in Traeger. That's really how we took a 27-year-old business doing $75 million, 10 years later to doing 10 times that much. It was different people, it was different culture, it was different alignment around our aspiration to build. But I also learned along the way that culture has to be made, not only built deliberately, but it has to be maintained thoughtfully and deliberately every single day. And it tends to be easier to live and maintain culture when you're winning. But when the chips are down, when the pressure is on, when the business is not performing, those are actually the moments that need cultural values the most. And I learned that the hard way. We had many years of success, and then we hit some rough patches. And in those rough patches, I realized as we got a little bit into those that we weren't really amplifying our cultural values in the moment that we needed them the most. It's something that we've worked really hard on. And even as much as we built the cultural values in a tough moment, we got the business to grow. It became this incredible place that people just enjoyed being a part of. Over the last 4 years, as we've come out of the pandemic and things have been challenging, and we've gone through high interest rates and a challenging consumer environment, and tariffs, which are sort of the latest bane of my existence, we're learning to respect and build the culture in a period where it matters the most to the team.
You've written about upside goggles for entrepreneurs taking risks without imploding the business. What's one risk you took at Traeger that paid off big, and one that taught you the most?
The notion of upside goggles is interesting. As entrepreneurs, we're blue sky thinkers, and we're willing to take risk, and we just expect that all of the risks will pay off. And we also expect it because, first of all, we just have that confidence. Like, that's part of being an entrepreneur. We see the upside. And then all of the stories of entrepreneurship, they are, they're mostly successful stories that we listen to and that we aspire to build. And there's no question that we've taken some big swings at Traeger, and looking back, some of them are probably riskier than we understood. In a startup, you take a lot of risk, but you actually don't have that much to risk from an asset perspective. And that wasn't true at Traeger. As much as I aspired to build a great business, it was a $75 million business, and we paid for it. And so it's one thing to take risk on a business worth nothing, and it's a lot more to take risk on a business that you've invested a lot of money in with a private equity partner. One of the biggest risks that we took early on that I was very motivated to take was relocating the headquarter office from Oregon, from just a suburb of Portland to Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was a risk that felt obvious to me. We had to do it. We had so many hard experiences with the culture. It was impossible to rebuild. I wanted to rebuild it by rebuilding the team and really leaving some of our problems in the rearview mirror. We had some tough moments, and if you ever read that Harvard Business Review article, I talk about this catalyst that really drove me to rebuild the business, where I realized that the company was just so culturally toxic. And so I decided to move the headquarter office, and I had a list of like 25 like very, very big material risky initiatives that I wanted to tackle. And I had a private equity partner in Trilantic Capital Partners. And I was like all blue sky, let's go, go, go. And they're not venture capitalists. They tend to buy and build stable businesses. And they were worried that I was going to break this thing. And boy, when I told them I wanted to move the headquarter office, they said, not so fast. And they were a good governor in the process. And we actually didn't move the office immediately. We moved it over the course of 12 months. We built and communicated a strategy. We shared with the employees how we would compensate them and offer recommendations if they were to stay for the year. And they sort of dribbled off along the way. And we built redundant team in Utah along the way. And it worked, but it was hairy. And I realized it as we got into the process. And there's no question, when you say goodbye to 95% of your headquarters staff, and it's more than 100, and you rebuild it, there's so much risk in that process. I had upside goggles. It was all upside. We managed to not break the business in the process, and it turned out to be a very, very important thing that we did long-term for the business for all of us. But it wasn't without its risk, and I didn't understand the risk when I did it.
What do you see as the biggest opportunity for Utah to become a hub for consumer innovations?
Utah's a really interesting place, and it's been fun for me to watch since I arrived here in early 2005, how Utah's gone from like an economy with nice underlying energy, driven by, I would say, motivated by just this really great talent pool and a regulatory environment that's like very, very state government business friendly. And this tech ecosystem, this entrepreneurial tech ecosystem's really blown up since then. And so as much as Utah still feels small and connected, the underlying economy is so much more robust than it ever was. And technology has been that driver. And if you look at some of the earliest technology companies, the WordPerfects, the gigahertz, those were the start. And then you had entrepreneurs like Josh James, like Ryan Smith that built businesses that really spawned other businesses and entrepreneurs. You see talent come to the state, and entrepreneurs watch these entrepreneurs and they want to go out and build something meaningful themselves. And so it's really been tech driven, although Skullcandy was probably the first major consumer success in Utah, and that I may be overstating that. I'm sure there are other consumer product businesses that I should lump in with that, but we've seen many others, and these companies tended to have a lot of overlap from a talent perspective. So, Traeger Grills, for example, I brought a lot of people from Skullcandy and Cotopaxi. I know many people from Skullcandy that went through there. And you look at all of not only does the inspiration start to build as people watch other successful consumer product entrepreneurs, but capabilities build either by people coming into the state or by people joining these businesses and getting trained in the world of consumer. And so I absolutely believe that Utah can also become a hub for consumer products. We're seeing biotech take off. Again, the same phenomenon that's building that. And I think, we're seeing other interesting hubs. One is around critical minerals or rare mineral mining. And so Utah's a robust place. And I'm actually very optimistic that, because of my love for consumer product companies, for brands, that I've been a small part of what I think is going to be a really robust ecosystem long-term.
Leadership often starts at home. How have your 6 kids influenced your management style?
Leadership really does start in the home, and it is interesting for me to think about my principles of leadership and how, although the people I lead are very different here at Traeger, not every day, but very, very different in general than the family, the children I lead in my home. There's certainly there are time-tested principles to leadership. There are a lot that I could think of that have applicability for me, the most meaningful one and the most powerful one is to lead by example. Leading by example is powerful, and there are definitely moments where I've had to step back and say that either in my home or in the company, I'm leading with words and not leading first with example. And children are smart. They're incredibly intuitive. Although they may not have the sophistication to talk about leadership, they have intuition in what motivates and inspires them and who and how they want to follow. And I've seen that over and over. Sometimes my children will behave a certain way and I'll get after them and I'll realize they were probably following my example in some of those moments. I remember a moment with my youngest daughter, who's now 11 years old. Her name is Gwyneth. She was 3 years old, and it was after a busy day at Traeger, and I'm doing the dishes. Kristin usually is home sooner to cook, and I'm home later to eat and to do the dishes. And I'm doing the dishes, and Gwyneth is laying on the ground at 3.5 years old, the dishwasher open, her feet propped up on the dishwasher, and she's telling me these amazing stories I'm sure that I'm really not listening to. And I'm just doing the dishes, and I'm picking up my phone, and I'm responding to things going on in the office and on the other side of the world related to Traeger. And she could have said, Dad, I cut my arm off today and I'm not going to survive. And my response would have been something like, that's great. That's great, Gwyneth. I hope that was a great experience for you. Like really just not even paying attention in my own world. And I remember Gwyneth saying, Dad, will you look me in the eyes when I'm talking to you? My 3.5-year-old. And of course, my initial reaction is one of defensiveness. It's like, how dare you? I'm doing the dishes for the meal that your mom cooks so that we can afford to eat another meal tomorrow. And as the thought was formulated, I knew it was an untrue thought, and I needed to say, Gwyneth, I'm sorry. And what was the example that I was setting then? The example of like complete focus, complete presence, complete care for the people that I'm interacting with. How do I expect to influence people positively if I'm not really present in the moment and thinking about the journey that we're navigating together? And that was a great lesson taught to me by my 3.5-year-old. And I realized those principles, they certainly live. The principles of like real, genuine, authentic leadership and positive influence, they live across boundaries.
During the pandemic, outdoor cooking boomed, but has cooled off after the pandemic. That has changed the demand for Traeger grills. How is Traeger adapting?
We had Traeger had many years of methodical growth from early 2014 until early 2020. We grew from $75 million to $425 million during that period of time. And it was very methodical. It was rebuilding product and brand and channel, team and culture. And then we got to the pandemic, and we were already growing and taking share. And the category just went through the roof. And so from 2019, where we finished at $425 million, to 2021, we grew to $785 million. It was staggering. And of course, we felt good about the great work we were doing. The reality is we had done some good foundation building, but as a moment in time that people were quarantining, they were nesting at home, they were buying anything related to outdoor or just a home environment, a home experience. And literally from the fourth quarter of 24 until the I'll say the second quarter of 22, where effectively that's our barbecue season, we just went from feast to famine. Consumers said, we are finally done buying goods, buying things for our home. We've overconsumed, and we want to overconsume on experiences and travel. And Europe took off, and Hawaii, and Taylor Swift's Eras Tour, just like perfectly timed. And that was a hard moment for us. Not only did demand drop meaningfully, but we were sitting on a ton of inventory. It was the highest cost inventory. We had a lot of debt on our balance sheet. We just ran out of liquidity. No one was going to lend us more money. No one was going to invest in our business. And it was just a devastating moment of going from many, many years, 8 years of just incredible success to just nothing. And it was very, very difficult. And, I'll say it's been a 4-year journey. And the journey it's been numerous headwinds, starting with pull forward demand and supply chain complexity and tariffs and high interest rates and low housing transactions. And I'll just say it's been the best journey of my life. It hasn't always been pleasant. And, honestly, I went through a period in 2022 for 6 months where it was just painful. It was deeply painful. And I woke up every morning, and I'm an early riser. I get up I've got a morning routine that's important to me. And, I remember looking in the mirror every day, and I wasn't saying these words out loud, but I had this monologue in my head, which was something to the effect of, you have this amazing life. You've got this incredible wife and marriage and 6 beautiful children, and your mortgage is paid off, and you're not working to put food on the table, but you're so miserable. And that was hard, because I am an optimistic, I'm not a miserable person almost ever. And it was a moment where I had to really, I had to adapt my mindset. I had to start to learn that I could go through adversity, and it could be really hard and really painful, and I could be very happy. I didn't want to be unhappy for the next 3 years as my then freshman daughter became a senior, which she is now. And we've gotten through another really hard experience with tariffs this year. And, it's important for me that I could look a problem, really look a problem in the eyes and say, this is good for me. This adversity is going to make me better. It's going to make me stronger. I'm going to learn from it. And I'm going to be happy. I may not be satisfied with my business, but I'm going to be happy along the way. And so, as much as you asked about, how did Traeger adapt? I actually had to adapt first as a leader, or I was going to struggle to lead this company. And I had to be strong myself, and I had to really have the right mindset to be able to lead the company. But you know what? Over the last 4 years, we've had to get really lean from an operating expense standpoint. We've had to shift our mindset from being all growth focused to being focused on prioritizing liquidity and our bank leverage or our bank covenants. We've had to invest in long lead time things like product that take many years to come to fruition. And it's been the greatest business learning experience of my life. Many MBAs over, and I'd say they haven't cost me, but a lot of stock, so they have been way more expensive than a Harvard MBA. But I really value those experiences, and honestly, more than the business learnings, I value the life experiences of learning to navigate adversity and be happy through it, and learning to be a leader of people who actually need me, and they need me to show up and lead them the right way. Doesn't mean being optimistic every day, but it means a lot of things around how to motivate and be transparent and honestly helping lead them through things. So it's been quite the journey. Then tariffs came. We were actually making real progress. We had doubled our EBITDA, which was $41 million in 2022 to $82 million almost in 2024. And we were leaning back into growth. We were launching new products and investing in brand and sales. And we got into this year, and new presidential administration, and Trump likes tariffs. And that hit us hard, and it was devastating. I mean, if you think about the bullseye of global trade, like the worst place that you can be, at the very center, you've got China and you've got steel. And they just happen to be the 2 largest tariffs, and they stack on top of each other. And so it's really forced us to build a more efficient supply chain, to start to leave China, find more efficient partners and more efficient geographies. It's motivated us to rethink our product line, our product architecture, our pricing, to get super lean operationally. And you know what? There were 45 to 60 days in the spring, the post-Liberation Day, where I didn't know if we were going to survive this. We just didn't know if we were entering a nuclear winter that was just greater than Traeger, and we knew that we were highly exposed to it. But we survived it, and we made a very deliberate decision as a leadership team that we weren't done reinventing our business, because survival was never the aspiration. We had done enough to survive, and now we needed to continue to streamline and just rethink our strategy so that we can win in future years. So 2025 has been just an unbelievable experience of ripping apart a business. It's been hard. We've let 40% of our team around the world go, and it's some really good people that were just expensive and no longer fit with the existing strategy as it needed to evolve. But it's been an incredible experience, and it's given me a lot of confidence, and I would like the learnings to lead to winnings, but for now I get to continue to learn.
How do you think AI will impact your business internally and externally?
AI, definitely the buzzword. It's been interesting to watch perspectives of CEOs is as big as Doug McMillon, who recently retired from Walmart. CEOs that said, of course we know AI is coming. Technology is an important enabler to our business, but we don't know that it's actually going to bear fruit as fast as people believe it might. And over the course of 6 months, we've just completely heard that tone shift. And people are finding real applications. And the answer is we still need to figure out what it means for our business, but we are finding interesting tools in areas where it just makes sense. Think about demand and supply planning, for example. You have people behind spreadsheets predicting demand and trying to just aggregate all of these events, which in our industry include promotions, they include competitive offerings, they include weather. It's like you can't possibly, through a spreadsheet and a human generating all of the assumptions, be great at planning. So AI is perfect for certain things out of the gate. Planning's one of them. But we've started to do some interesting things to really learn about content generation through AI, which honestly 12 months ago was miserable and 6 months ago was intolerable. But today we're finding the ability to start to make more content, better content, that's really enabling our marketing team. And so, we're early in the deployment of AI. We've got a lot to learn, but I would say for us, it's starting first with the operations of the business, and then we need to start to really think about what does it mean from an end consumer experience perspective. We are a smart grill. We're connected. We use content and data to improve the cooking experience. So we have started to think more, and I don't know that we have concrete ideas, but we've got a lot of things that we're working on to ensure that we can get more efficient as a business, so that we can take the efficiencies gained, put them back into investing in the consumer, and then actually leverage AI to make the consumer experience better. It's a pretty exciting time. I do worry about AI in the world and what our children are going to grow up in and how they're going to learn to think and write, and just all of the good and the bad that AI can do. I'm sure every generation said that, but I think AI is going to be a powerful force.
From headphones at Skullcandy to grills at Traeger, what's the common thread in innovating for lifestyle brands?
People ask me a lot, how did you go from headphones to grills? From 14 to 21-year-old irreverent young males to families in their 30s, 40s, 50s that are cooking in their backyard. And interestingly, I think there are many analogs, and they're really rooted in finding categories that I think have two key characteristics. One is they have been important to consumers, but companies and brands have under innovated. If you look at headphones were invented in Salt Lake in the 1920s or so for people to listen to General Conference. And then it became a large category, but a neglected category that all looked the same. And Skullcandy came along and said, we can innovate in the use case. We can, in terms of the skull crushers, the subwoofers built into snowboard helmets. So we can innovate in the materialization that expresses who people are. And grilling's similar. Gas grills were invented in the 70s, and for decades they refined, but there was no real new innovations that came to market. So these are big categories where consumers just didn't see a need to experience more, to pay more, because there are no innovations. I think the other thing that is sort of characteristic of these opportunities to build lifestyle brands and brands that matter to people, it's where there's a resurgence. There's new energy around a category. And so, let's say in the case of headphones, portable music, iPhones, suddenly people are consuming so much media privately on their devices, and headphones became more important. The world of cooking, I mean, look at, I'm a Gen X. I grew up in the world of fast food, and food is calories and function. And millennials came along and said, no, food is enjoyment. Food is experience. And so I think there was a resurgence in the experience around food, and Traeger played nicely into that.
Your wife, Kristin, inspires thousands with cooking and fitness content. How has collaborating with her influenced your view of caring as a community value?
My wife is the ultimate grassroots marketer. If she were hireable, this company would hire her in a heartbeat. And I've actually learned a lot from her. One of the things that's been fun for us around Traeger is that we have this shared love for food, for cooking, for community, for bringing people together and hosting and entertaining. She had that long before I did Traeger, and I developed a lot of that with Kristin and with Traeger. One of the things that I think is just really the holy grail of any brand, and really hard to build, is a community that actually comes together because of the brand. And we worked hard to do that, and there's no question that Kristin has inspired me in terms of how she brings people together. Our mission at Traeger is to bring people together to create a more flavorful world. And the bringing together is the community piece, and the cooking and the sharing. And I would say what Kristin has taught me about community and how caring and community really become amplified is that she does it with no profit motivation in mind. The community that Kristin builds, she builds because she loves the people. She wants to serve and support the people. And she has such a capability in grassroots marketing that the combination of those two things have been amazing. We have a great capability in grassroots marketing, and we try to be very authentic. Of course, we are a for-profit organization, but I think we have a genuine love for the community we serve and for the experience that we're trying to bring her. But I've learned to bring together. But I have learned a lot about that from Kristin.
I have often called you my most important mentor other than my own father. Who is one mentor that shaped your entrepreneurial fire? And what advice would you give your younger self starting out?
You're nice to call me an important mentor in your life. That actually means a lot. You're a dear friend, and I've loved, you've been a mentor to me. You've inspired me so much over the years, and especially over the last handful of years. Mentorship's important. It really is. Outside of my own family, my dad has been a really important mentor to me across my life, but certainly in business. There are a number of people, and I didn't find mentorship until later in my career. But I would say one of the most important mentors in my life is a guy named Wayne Marino. Wayne was the CFO and COO of Under Armour from $50 million in sales to $2 billion in sales. And I was told to reach out to him. He was leaving Under Armour. He was moving out west. And I had this harebrained idea that I could hire him to be the CFO of Skullcandy. He was uninterested, but he picked up my phone call, and he was my cold call, and he was super helpful to me. And then he said, "I'm coming through Salt Lake in a few weeks to go out to Lake Tahoe, where I'm going to live. Can I stop by Salt Lake?" And he stopped for not a lunch, but 2.5 days. And he slept in my humble basement, and he came to the office every day, and we whiteboarded problems I was going through and solutions. And he became an important mentor. He helped me find what I did next. He was an important part of helping me sort of filter out my next opportunity, which became Traeger. He eventually joined the board, and he spent over 10 years on the board. And boy, I'll say that mentors are important. And Wayne took an interest in me. And I've thought about, how do I take an interest in other people? And, it's like there are finite hours in the day. And so I think being thoughtful and being just to what is the right fit, who gives me energy, where can I be helpful, who's asking me the questions that I feel like I can uniquely be helpful on. But Wayne was an incredible mentor in my career and my life.
In tough times, how do you maintain optimism, and what's your go-to Traeger recipe for recharging after a board meeting?
Talked about my experience going through 2022 and just almost feeling destroyed and defeated on a personal level. And I'll tell you what I really value from that experience is, we worked our way out of a difficult moment, but I didn't quite know if I was a stronger person because I hadn't been faced with something as hard since then. And I came into 2025, and I was granted that opportunity to really validate that I was a stronger person. And we've gone through hard things, and I'm nothing but intrigued by and fascinated by the experience, by the rebuilding. The messier, the better. Of course, I would rather be winning than cleaning up a mess. But I've learned to be optimistic through hard times. And you know what? Cooking on a Traeger, honestly, is one of the things that it's just it's a passion, it's a hobby, and it's something I really enjoy doing, especially on Sunday afternoon when life slows down a little bit. What is my favorite go-to recipe? Well, that's going to change. That changes all the time. I love brisket. I just cooked 15 brisket for 400 of our favorite people, 450 people at our annual Christmas party a couple of weeks ago. So that's a fun one for me right now because I'm finally mastering it. But the other that I've done a bunch of times lately is a reverse seared pork tenderloin with homemade chimichurri sauce. It is low on effort, high on return, and man, is it good.
Looking beyond grills, what emerging consumer trend excites you most for the next big brand disruption?
Looking beyond grills and other consumer trends, it is an interesting moment in the world of consumer. The integration of technology, firmware, software, hardware, the seamless integration is really creating some interesting category disruptions. Look at Tesla and driving, not just the electric car, but the auto drive function, which my wife just discovered, Kristin just discovered on her Model Y. And it's like the best thing she's ever seen. She turns it on and she just goes to wherever she's going. And it's like, it's fun. It's incredible. And so there are a lot of disruptions that I think we're seeing because of technology's ability to create a better consumer experience. I will say the space that's really interesting to me right now is the integration of technology and the knowledge of health to gamify health and create just a better lifestyle and better outcomes. I'm a big fan of Peter Attia and his book Outlive, and this thought of over the course of decades, like really owning my health and my habits and all of the data and the blood markers and the behaviors, and adjusting for DNA and dispositions that came with me. And I'm fascinated by that. And then I'm looking at all of the technology that goes along with that, that allows us to track these biomarkers day by day, and I think it's pretty fascinating. I think it's one of these opportunities to not only create a better experience, but to create a better life. As you think about medicine 2.0, putting band-aids on problems that are existing, and this 3.0 of Peter Attia and that philosophy, and consumer health technologies that allow us to go way upstream and actually create better outcomes. I think it's fascinating, and I absolutely love it.
You have been called the most prolific angel investor in Utah, but you don't talk about it. What companies are you really excited about investing in?
Investing is my side hustle. It's my passion. I bought my first public stock when I was in college. I had no idea what I was doing. I doubled my money and it just felt too easy. I bought a house in college and renovated and became a landlord. I've been an investor for decades. And I really love to invest. And I love to invest in part because I think there's a method to the madness. And part of that method is just, it's not just choosing business models, but it's choosing operators and entrepreneurs, which I find to be really interesting and great pattern recognition as an operator myself. But I love the energy that I get from investing, and I only invest in private things because I like the idea of asymmetric information. And having been a day trader, I never want to feel motivated to trade in and out of investments. I want to own things for many years, and so I've really enjoyed that. I don't talk a lot about that, but I hear other people talk a lot about my involvement. I am on a lot of cap tables. Boy, I have hundreds of private investments, and there are some interesting ones. But I'll tell you about a public investment. I don't invest in public companies, except my own, except Traeger. But I do make investments in businesses that ultimately go public. And one that went public recently that I'm still a shareholder of is Angel Studios, and invested many years ago. And there are two things that I really love about it. I love the disruptive business model, the way that they crowdsource ideas and figure out before you invest a ton of money into a production, how do you make sure that others are willing to invest as well? How do you use that as an indicator of real market demand, where creative content's more art than science? So I love the business model disruption. But what I love even more is that its mission is to bring light to the world, and it only invests in things that bring light, that bring positivity. They were the producers of The Chosen, many just beautiful movies and series since. And so I think that's an interesting one. I think it's fun when you can invest in something that you believe in from a business model perspective, but also something that that you love. You love what it does for the world of business and for humankind.
Jeremy, thank you so much for your time for this different type of interview. I have learned so much from you, and I am so excited to share your story with the world, or at least with the people who follow me.
Brad, it's been great spending time with you. You're one of my favorite human beings in the world. You inspire me more than you know. I love you like a brother. Thanks for the opportunity to have this great conversation. And keep charging forward, man. You are changing the world. I'm the guy who should be interviewing you for your podcast because you are the one that's like really, with all of your faculties, with the faculties you have left and through technology and just real inspiration and determination, you're doing amazing things. Thanks for doing it. Thank you for inspiring me. Love you, my friend.
That's all for this first episode of FutureLink Interview with Brad Smith. Jeremy, thank you truly from the bottom of my heart for being my guest, for your generosity with your time and stories, and for the years of friendship and mentorship that mean more to me than I can ever express. This conversation was everything I hoped it would be and more. To everyone watching, thank you for joining us on this new adventure. If Jeremy's journey inspired you, challenged you, or just made you think, that's exactly why I'm doing this. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on YouTube at @ALSCyborg so you never miss a future conversation. Follow me on X at @ALSCyborg for updates on new episodes, behind the scenes, and more. If you'd like to support the podcast and help me keep bringing these stories to life, you can. Subscribe on X for $5 a month, or send a one-time donation via Venmo to @ALSCyborg. Every bit of support means the world and directly helps make more episodes possible. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next one. Until then, stay curious and stay connected.